If you're thinking about moving to Jacksonville, Florida, you've probably already considered the many benefits of living here, such as the great weather, the beaches, and the many things to do. We've talked a lot about these benefits on our channel, but today we're going to do something a little different and talk about some possible deal breakers for you that you might not know of. So let's jump in. So to start off, one of the most common complaints we get here in Florida in general, but also among locals here in Northeast Florida, is traffic. We've got our aggressive drivers, we have really slow drivers. There's really a mix of different driving styles here, which could possibly be related to the amount of people that are always relocating here to Florida. Then the other thing to keep in mind is construction. It's a big city, you're gonna see it. Just keep in mind that that can add about 10 to 15 minutes or sometimes even more onto your morning commutes or even afternoon. And then holiday traffic at its peak can also be very bad, especially with schools being in and out of session. There's tons of schools here throughout Northeast Florida, and of course your school zones are also gonna add on additional time to your commute. Now, another thing to consider is because Duval County and Northeast Florida in general is so spread out, there are tons of bridges. We have St. Johns County that runs throughout, and also the Intracoastal going over to the beaches. You have multiple bridges of varying lengths and heights, so that's also something to keep in mind. And of course, if there's construction going on those bridges, that can also add time to your commute. There are still a handful of walkable and bikeable neighborhoods here like San Marco, Riverside, Avondale, and the beaches. But as I mentioned earlier, Jacksonville is pretty spread out, so you'll definitely want to have a car or some mode of transportation for your day-to-day activities, because it can take you about an hour to get from one side of Duval County to another, more or less depending on the traffic that we've talked about. But as a whole, in my opinion, the traffic here is not as bad as it can be in Tampa or Orlando, but again, it's just a common complaint that we hear amongst locals. Now, before we go on to our next topic, we know that there's only so much you can learn about Jacksonville without talking to a local expert. So email us at info@theroccogroup.com so we can dive into more details for you. Now on to the next one. Next, we're going to be talking about CDD and HOA fees. Now, if you're not from Florida, you may not be familiar with what CDD fees are, so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. However, here in Jacksonville, we have a ton of new construction communities and what we also call master planned communities. Now, in these master planned communities, this is a lot of times where you'll find those CDD fees because they're paying for these additional amenities or what we call resort style amenities. So this extra infrastructure that's been put into the community, such as Nocatee or Beach Walk, if you're familiar with either of those communities. Now, HOA fees, as I'm sure you're aware, homeowners association fees, typically pay for the maintenance of the grounds, like common areas or the front entrance if there is a gate, and then the board members. Whereas your CDD fee is a bond or a loan essentially that was put on the community from the developer, and you're paying them back for the infrastructure over time. One thing that you'll notice is that CDD fees also don't necessarily equal luxury. So there will be some communities that you run into where they do have a CDD fee, where they may not necessarily have those resort style amenities. The price and payments for HOA and CDD fees also vary. For your HOA fees, it's going to depend on what the community itself requires, whether that's monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or yearly, and you'll have HOA fees as little as 15 or 20 bucks a month, all the way up to a couple of $100s a month. Now for CDD fees, they're typically around $1,000 to over $3,500 per year, and they are paid as part of your property taxes. On to the next is things to do here in Jacksonville. Now, if you have spent any amount of time on Jacksonville's Facebook groups, you've probably noticed how many locals mention how boring Jacksonville is. There's a lot of mixed feelings amongst locals here, but if you're maybe from up north or you don't come from somewhere near the beaches or any type of water, the location alone may be enough for you. But if you do come from a livelier place, you'll notice here in Jacksonville that a lot of things close a lot earlier. There's not a ton of activities for young families and kids. And one of the other things is our lack of nightlife because our downtown area isn't as developed. Now, you will find here at the beaches or in Riverside, you do have some nightlife opportunity. However, Jacksonville is not a hub like Miami or New York City for those endless opportunities for nightclubs. We do have bars like Surfer and Hoptinger that are a little bit more lively and energetic. However, in general, you're typically going to find more of those traditional bar scenes that are open into late night hours. Now, if the nightlife conversation doesn't pertain to you and maybe you're more concerned about things to do with your family or the little ones, something you should be aware of is that a lot of Jacksonville moms here complain about about the lack of indoor activities to do, especially on the weekend when it's raining during the summer. There are many outdoor activities to keep the little ones entertained, from the beaches to the zoo to our parks and many outdoor recreational areas. But when it comes to indoor activities, we're really limited to museums, the movie theaters, and of course trampoline parks. Now this is something you probably want to keep in mind when looking to relocate to the area, but another benefit to those master plan communities that we talked about earlier today, because many of them, such as Nocatee, offer a monthly calendar with activities for the little ones. It's a great opportunity for them to meet other kids their age and of course keep you guys busy. Now on to the next topic is weather. Something we've talked a lot about on our channel is the summer weather here in Jacksonville, which is a huge plus to many, of course, being at the beaches, but also isn't everybody's favorite. Now something that you'll commonly see here is what we call our afternoon showers. It is not uncommon here in Northeast Florida, especially during those summer months from May to June, that we have an afternoon shower that comes out of nowhere and doesn't last an extended period of time. You'll have blue sunny skies and just minutes later it's torrential downpouring. Now a common misconception about our summer weather here in Jacksonville is because we're located so far north, many people don't think that our extreme highs can get as high as they do in South Florida. Our averages do tend to be lower, but we can see extreme highs at 100 degrees or more, just like South Florida does as well. Now if you're anything like me and you don't necessarily love being sticky and sweaty and hot from the sun and the humidity, you may get a little cranky being outside in those summer months. However, the summer weather here is a huge benefit to many, but there are others who cannot wait until the fall weather kicks in. So on a similar topic, something that may take you by surprise is the amount of bugs or insects that you'll encounter when moving here. Because of our tropical climate, it's not uncommon that you'll find things such as beetles or roaches, of course mosquitoes, and when those summer months come around, the mosquitoes can pretty much make it impossible to enjoy the outdoors. Now there are many precautions that you can take, such as keeping up with your landscaping and hiring a pest control company, which are very effective ways to keep pests out of your home. However, the reality of it is your day-to-day life outdoors, especially during those summer months or back to a body of water, you're likely going to be encountering some insects. Well, that wraps up today's video. We hope it was insightful. If you're thinking about moving here to Jacksonville, be sure to reach out to our team at info@theroccogroup.com. See you on the next one.